Hey guys, it's Roger with Eclectic here to give you my review for Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm coming to you live again from my little Batcave solo, and I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and say spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, definitely go watch it. Again, what are you doing with your life? But, definitely go watch it. It was amazing. It was awesome. So here we go. So right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think out of 10, I give this movie an 8. It could just be that in the back of my mind, we've done this whole Spider-Man thing over and over and over again, but Tom Holland definitely brings a different kind of energy to the role. It could just be that it's a younger Peter Parker, but it's a different kind of charisma that we haven't seen into the other roles. I did appreciate that it wasn't an origin story. They do allude to how he got the spider powers throughout the movie. Not necessarily in flashbacks, but just kind of like there's an actual montage kind of where Ned, his best friend, is asking him questions, and he's like, so how'd you get the powers? And, they go ahead and answer that question about the spider and, how, it bit him, he got powers and this and that. They didn't really mention Uncle Ben, though they did say they were talking about Aunt May and how everything that happened to her, he doesn't want to reveal more information to her, so he doesn't want to tell her that he's Spider-Man. It's very organic and very natural how they give you all of the origin stuff. I know throughout the movie we got to see a little bit of Peter Parker as the genius, the way he engineers a lot of the spider stuff. We got to see the, what is it called? The Spidey beacon, the spider light. We also got to see the spider tracer that he creates, and there's a scene where he uses it to trace down the shockers, but I don't know if it's coming from, because in the comics he's the one that created that, so I don't know. I don't recall if it came from the web shooters that he made or if it came from the Stark suit, but we did get to see that on screen. He is one of the smartest people in his decathlon team, so I guess we do see that part of his genius, and him being on the decathlon team does play a big role into the movie, with him ending up in DC and other revelations that happened throughout that little arc. Even though we didn't really get to see Peter Parker as like the engineer, a lot of that was left to his supporting cast, and I do feel that was a good decision on the writer's part, just because it adds another layer of depth to the movie, and another it just makes it a lot more fulfilling towards the end. This movie does a really good job at reminding you that Peter Parker is a kid, and they do that really well throughout the entire movie, because they don't just give you like a montage of him struggling with his powers, struggling with his powers at first, training montage, mastered powers, and then goes after the villain. They don't give you that. The entire movie is a training montage. Like, he's just this bumbling idiot going through with his new spider suit, with his powers, and he is smart in terms of like how to go about the next move, but in terms of like being Spider-Man, it's very, he's learning, and we're learning with him, which is really cool. They reference Amazing Spider-Man number 33 after fighting Doc Ock. I'll put panels here and here. After fighting Doc Ock in his lab, he takes out the master pillar that makes the building fall down on him. He crawls under like this, like an AC unit, and he finds his way out. Obviously this stuff is very heavy, and then he lifts it, thereby bringing out in him the best that he can be, right? So sort of like strength that he knew that was within him all along. And the cool thing about that is also that throughout that, it's the scene where he comes to terms with Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and that's something that we haven't seen, like we mentioned in our Spider-Man discussion and our trailer discussion, that find the link up. That's something that we hadn't seen in the movies before, but it's really nice that they're rounding out the character, and they're making him Peter Parker the Spider-Man. It was shot really well. Just that specific scene, and he looks himself in the water. He has that Mulan moment when he's half Spider-Man, half Peter Parker, but that's when he really comes to grips with it. Like I said, they didn't really mention Uncle Ben, but Ben in the comics, he's like the catalyst for him becoming Spider-Man, right? So this whole with greater power comes with great responsibility. That's a theme that's evident throughout the entire film. And I feel that Tony Stark serving that Uncle Ben role, not necessarily making him the reason that he takes up the Spider-Man mantle, just you have to have a moral code in order for you to succeed in the superhero business, and you have to have a certain kind of a look at the bigger picture, and just know that it's not all about you. It's about, what if you had made the wrong move, millions of people could have died, or thousands of people could have died. Like for when they're on the ferry, he was selfish in a sense that he wanted to be like Tony Stark, the Iron Man, but he could have gotten all these people on the ferry killed. So Michael Keaton as the Vulture was perfect. He was my favorite part of the entire movie. Though he didn't feel like a mastermind villain, like a big bad kind of thing. He just felt like a street level criminal that happened on some alien technology, and now he's up there. But his interaction with Tony Stark, or indirect interaction with Tony Stark, sets up the film very well. And that was one of the things that I did like about this movie, is that everything had a purpose, right? And that's, I made that point in like the Wonder Woman review and like other videos. But everything serves a purpose, and it flows really well from scene to scene, because everything lends itself to the next, right? So at the beginning we have Tony Stark cleaning up the mess from the first Avengers movie with the Chitauri technology. He creates this like damage control unit in New York, and he's cleaning up the city streets. But that's Toombs's, the Vulture, Toombs's department. He says he hired a truck and a crew to go ahead and clean all this up. So he's getting run out by Tony Stark. And then Peter Parker also has a relationship with Tony Stark with the Stark internship, right? So everybody's interaction with Tony Stark, everything's related, which is really cool. The thing about the Vulture also is that he gets enough screen time for you to get invested in him and for you to get to know what he does. And, I think it's amazing that they started with him and they gave you a background to what he's doing, so that way you understand and you're invested. And then he gets enough screen time for you to get invested, like I've said multiple times already. You need to stop saying invested. But he gets enough screen time for you to get invested and for you to fear him, which is really cool. I think, like JR said in our Spider-Man discussion, Michael Keaton does dark really well, and he brings that kind of like Norman Osborn-ish, Green Goblin darkness to this character, which is really cool. And the thing about Michael Keaton is that he's a really good voice actor, like in terms of like menacing voice, but he also is a really good facial actor, so you can read a lot into his emotions, and that was really evident in that car ride scene. So there's a twist, and like I said, spoilers. The Vulture is Peter Parker's love interest. Her name is Liz. He is her father. Yes. Yep. So there's a homecoming, right? Peter Parker gets a date, Liz, to homecoming, and turns out that Vulture is her dad. So he shows up at that front door. We don't know who it's gonna be. He opens the door, and everybody in my theater went silent. There was gasp and oh my god everywhere. It was crazy. So he opens the door. There's a certain suspense element that is now present in the film, because it's just him. It's just Toombs and Parker in the kitchen talking, and the light is shining on Michael Keaton, literally, because he's in the kitchen with the light on, and he's like waving a knife. He's like, "Why are you so scared? Like you look pale." All this other crap. So there's that interaction with Peter, and he's the ride for their homecoming dance. So they're in the car, they're talking, they're at a street light, and Liz is giving her dad all this information about the Stark internship, how he was in DC. So he's putting all these pieces together, and at the light, it reminded me a lot of Breaking Bad, the way they use the light and the shadows to highlight the villain. Like when in Breaking Bad, like in Heisenberg, whenever Heisenberg is present, the half of his face is always in shadows, right? And if you go back and watch the show, you notice that. It's a thing that they use, and it's a really awesome technique. I thought it was really well done. So they're at the red light, and that's when he starts to piece it together. So the red light is shining, and then when he finally makes it up in his mind that, oh, I got it, I'm gonna kill you, the green light goes. And the green is the color of the Vulture, so that's when the Vulture is present now, and he's not dealing with just another dad. So they get to the homecoming dance, and he tells his daughter to go inside, and he gives Peter Parker this talk. He says the dad talk, which is really like, I know who you are, don't mess with my business, don't mess with my family, and you'll stay alive. And it's like, you can tell that Peter Parker was scared. Tom Holland and Michael Keaton did really well in that scene. I think that was my favorite scene of the entire movie. And it sets up the third act really well. So the thing about the third act like I've mentioned in like the Wonder Woman video, and I'm going to reference that a lot, but like I've mentioned in the Wonder Woman video, is the third act just feels like it's thrown in there, right? Like nobody really earns the right, or yeah, the right to take on their villain. But in, you know, like I said, this movie flows really well, and that even stands for the third act. It flowed from him, Peter Parker, realizing what was happening with Tony Stark's moving day. So Tony Stark is moving from his New York Tower to the new Avengers facility that we've seen. It's officially moving day, and Vulture has developed this technology with the Tinkerer, what's his name, Mason, that you know, he'll be able to hijack that plane and, you know, be, you know, steal all of his technology and be set for life, selling it to other war criminals, right? So Peter Parker realizes this, you know, there's a fight in the sky. That's when we get the airplane scene from the trailer, and they, you know, they crash land onto, I want to say it's Atlantic City, because that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. So they crash onto the beach. There's another fight. Peter eventually defeats the Vulture because the Vulture tries to make away with some sort of like radiation, uranium, something that that Tony Stark uses in his suits, right? But the Chitauri technology that is in his wings, we find out in the movie that it's actually a bomb if it's exposed to radiation. So again, it's exposed to radiation. Suit blows up. Peter is trying to save Toomes' life, kind of succeeds. Pulls him out of the rubble, pulls him out of the smoke, and then just webs him up to the cargo and leaves a note like he has been leaving, and just says, you know, hey, I caught this guy, I saved him. And I think that's really cool, because in other Spider-Man movies, you see the villain get killed off, right? So it doesn't really set up or leave it open-ended. And this one breaks away from that trend, which is really cool. So seeing that other human element of Peter Parker and saving the villain and just having him go through the legal processes and, you know, just going through that, it's pretty cool. So like I mentioned in the Spider-Man discussion video, it's an 80s coming of age film that just happens to feature Spider-Man. And I think that's correct for the most part, because you can definitely see the John Hughes inspiration and references throughout the film. Like there's a scene where Peter Parker is chasing the Shocker through the suburban neighborhood, and it's a lot like Ferris Bueller's running home scene, right? Like when he's running home trying to beat his sister and his mom to the house, only instead of trying to run home, he's trying to run after the villain, right? And they actually even show a scene, that running home scene from Ferris Bueller, to the, like in one of the patios there's a TV playing a movie, and then he actually goes like, great movie, and you can see that movie playing in the back, and I thought that was pretty cool. It's almost like a fourth wall break, but not really. But you know, it's a nice little nod to the John Hughes 80s films. And now that we're at that point, let's talk about the twists and the Easter eggs, right? So throughout the film, I had my eye open, trying to keep, trying to spot all of these things. I'll start with the biggest one, or one of the biggest ones I think is a big twist, is MJ. Michelle, I think her last name is Jones, right? So Zendaya's character, Michelle, who we didn't know what was going on with her, ends up being MJ, and we know MJ is short for Mary Jane, only they switched it up on us and made it Michelle Jones. So I think that's going to be an interesting twist, see how that plays out in another Spider-Man movie. I don't know how I feel about that. I liked the twist. I get what they're doing with it, but I would have rather had a Gwen Stacy in the high school universe. But, you know, that's just me. I'm just, you know, Mary Jane is for later, you know. We also see in the school announcements, the female, there's a guy and a girl on the female announcements, and the female reporter's name is Betty Brant. Now, Betty Brant in the comics is John Jonah Jameson's secretary at the Daily Bugle, and Peter Parker's first love interest. You know, she's a young brunette in this movie. You know, they aged her down, so she's a high school student, and she's a blonde. She looks like a Gwen Stacy with a Betty Brant name. So I thought that was a pretty cool nod to the comics, is just having that name in there. We also got to see a lot of elements from the original Amazing Spider-Man, like first issues. We had the Spider Light, we had the Spider Wings, the Spider Tracer. It's very very old school Spider-Man, very old school Spider-Man, and they're paying homage to the original run. So I think that's awesome on their part, and they executed that really well. So as he's walking through the hall in one of the first scenes, there's a mural in the back, and you can it's like I think it's Einstein and Newton, and it's like a whole bunch of other like physicists and scientists, because it's a science school, and they also have Howard Stark, Papa Stark, in the back as well. If you once the crowd clears, you get to see that iconic little pencil stash And I thought that was a pretty cool nod to the Stark and keeping that everything in the family basically. We also got to see Mac Gargan, the Scorpion. I freaked out when I saw that because Scorpion is one of my favorite villains, just because one, his suit is awesome. Two, he's one of the more like sinister of the Sinister Six, which also will play another part. But so when Karen, he names her Karen, his little AI in the suit. When Karen runs the facial technology and they're going to the ferry. So the reason he's on the ferry is because there's an arms deal going on between the Vulture and an unknown party, right? So, he gets to the ferry and Karen runs the facial recognition technology and they recognize one of the guys as Mac Gargan. And I was like, oh my God, it's Mac Gargan. And they zoom into the guy and he's got a scorpion tattoo on his neck. So it's a scorpion, and they definitely allude to that. So that was a nice little Easter egg. He does get thrown off the ship and he ends up in the water, but seeing as how we got Mason, the Tinkerer, and we got Mac Gargan, the Scorpion, we also have Aaron Davis. That is Childish Gambino's character. In the Spider-Man discussion videos that we had before, JR and I had said Childish Gambino or Donald Glover was going to be Miles Morales. He is now Miles Morales adjacent, kind of. Aaron Davis in the Ultimate Universe is, what is his name? Well, we also had said that he's the Prowler, right? So the Prowler, we got the universe wrong, because the Prowler in 616, Earth 616, he works for Black Cat. He works with Silver Sable to take down Peter Parker, and he has this whole kind of like a rivalry with Peter. But since they are taking elements from the Ultimate Spider-Man storyline, the Prowler in that one, to my knowledge, doesn't have any affiliation with Black Cat or Silver Sable or anybody else. He's just kind of like he's just a villain that breaks into Osborn to get technology for, I think, the Scorpion. But the way that, so Aaron Davis, he is Miles Morales' uncle. And in the movie, when Peter Parker is intimidating Aaron Davis, he says he's trying to get the alien technology off the streets, right? So Aaron Davis was like, yo, I don't want that technology here. I got a nephew that lives here. I don't want him in trouble, right? That's trouble for me. So the nephew that he's referring to is Miles Morales. So that means that Miles Morales does exist in this universe, which is pretty cool. Will we get a Miles Morales film anytime soon? Probably not, just because he's only about like six years old. There's rumors of an animated movie, but I don't think we'll get to see a live action movie anytime soon. It is just really cool to know that he does exist in the MCU. So like I was saying, Aaron Davis, he's the uncle that breaks into Oscorp, and he's the one that brings home the spider that bites Miles Morales to give him the powers. So seeing that little nod to that was really cool. I really appreciated that. I like that. I was surprised and also happy to know that we were somewhat right, kind of called it. And then moving on towards the end of the movie, we get to see a new suit. Now, the way this new suit looks, I thought it was the Iron Spider at first, but the Iron Spider suit is a lot different than what this looks like. It basically looks like the Ben Reilly suit from Sensational Spider-Man with a really thick gold trim. So it could just be the MCU's version of the Iron Spider, and we might see it in Infinity War. We don't know yet, but the suit did look really, really, really cool. Moving on to the end of the movie, post-credit scenes. There are 2 post-credit scenes, a mid-credits and a post-credits. So definitely stay after for both of them. Patience is a virtue, I will say that. It just stay for both of them. The second scene is well worth your time to wait for sure. So with that being said, guys, again, I give this movie an 8 out of 10. Definitely go check it out for sure. Will it break records? I'm not sure. I don't think so, but it's definitely the best Spider-Man movie so far, and it definitely sets up Spider-Man for the future. So with that being said, guys, my name is Roger with Eclectic Nerds, and I'm out.